Hey everyone, welcome to this year's Photography Pros live chat, and I am really excited to welcome my four photography pros today. We are at the Center for Arts and Technology, and this is the semi-annual event. I have a live show where I just interview photographers who are using social media for their business and allow the students time to chat at the end and give their questions answered by some professional photographers. So I am Angelique Duffield from Bright Spark Media, and I teach the social media for photographers class for the digital photography program at the Center for Arts and Technology. So I am in Kelowna, BC, and it'll be interesting to hear where everybody is from. But I do have one of the former students who is going to be on the air today, and she will introduce herself, and I'm sure she will let you know that she's from Cato. So let me just get started. I will jump in, and let's start with Sherry. Why don't you introduce yourself, say where you're from, and what type of photography you specialize in?
Thank you, Angelique, for hosting this event and inviting me to join you. It's quite a pleasure and a thrill. I'm actually from Pennsylvania, a small town called Chambersburg, and it's about 30 minutes from Gettysburg, a very conservative town. Not much in the way of activity, but I try to bring a little spark to things around here because I do fairy photography. It's kind of a passion of mine. I have an interest in the fairies and all things magical. It started out with me deciding to leave the fine art field that I was in. It was just a little bit too serious for me. Although I had started many, many years ago as a motor racing sports photographer. I traveled the country taking race cars. So I've evolved over the years quite a bit into this fantasy and fairy culture genre, and right now I work with an exclusive model, and we've actually had some opportunities for bookings. Some very things just happened today, but we are actually doing a series of fairy photography, fairy shoots in all kinds, and most of my work, all my work is outside. I've trained with natural light photographers. I've trained with a number of different photographers, but my work is primarily outside. So right now in Pennsylvania it's very cold, so we're braving the cold, and we're having a lot of fun. We just like to bring magic, so that's really what I'm all about, is creating artistic interpretations with my work. And a lot of it is through Photoshop, so I enjoy bringing that creative edge to it as well.
Awesome. Thanks, Sherry. John, why don't you introduce yourself?
Yeah, definitely. My name is John Adrian, and I'm from Adrian Photographers, and we're a Kelowna photography team. We focus on destination Okanagan weddings, and we're mainly photographing at winery or lakeside events. So doing weddings mostly. My wife also shoots. She's on our team, Jenny. She's not here tonight, but yeah, that's kind of mainly what we focus on, just weddings in the Okanagan, BC.
Awesome, thanks. So Emma, why don't you tell us about your photography business?
Hi, thanks, Angelique. So as Angelique did mention, I am a former student of hers, and I did graduate from Cato, living in Salmon Arm, BC, but I specialize in sports action photography with Triple F Photography. Primarily, I stick to snowboarding. That's where I really live. That's my passion. So I spend a huge portion of my winter times up on the hills, underneath snowboarders, underneath jumps, all around rails. That's usually where you'll find me. So that's where I've been spending most of my time, and I've been able to work quite closely with Angelique over the last 2 years, doing some events as well as being a former student of hers.
Awesome. Thank you, Emma. And Christine, tell us about your business.
So hi, I'm Christine Tremoulet. I live way down south in Houston, Texas, where it's not cold and there's no snowboarders. And I wish it was. I wish for both. I'd like some cold. Anyways, I launched my photography business 7 years ago as a wedding photographer. And in 2012, switched my business to be primarily focused on boudoir photography. And from that have grown that my mission is to help women grow their confidence and rediscover their beauty, whether it's through photography or other work that I do with them. prior to my photography career, I actually come from a pretty solid geek background, so I brought that forward with me into my photography career.
Okay. Yeah, so why don't we just get started? And I'd like to just have each of you talk about how you started in photography. If you started with film. I went to Algonquin College in Ottawa, and I was back in the film generation. We had a dark room, and I had a roommate who had a dark room in our basement. And I've evolved from a film photographer to a digital photographer and made the switch pretty easily. I used to work at Black's Cameras, so anyone in Canada would recognize that name. And then I started to do social media, and I was using that to promote my own business. And then I realized a lot more people were asking me questions about social media, so I kind of morphed that into my business. But I still do photography. I do event photography and lifestyle photography for business owners. So I help them to create their online image. So it's they don't just need boring headshots anymore. They're using the pictures on their blogs and on their website and for their Facebook cover photo and things like that. So that's where my business has evolved to, and I'm curious to hear about each of you. Do you want to tell us about your business and if you ever did film or if you started right into digital, Sherry?
Actually, I'm a film gal as well. My initial learning curve came back in the 70s, so that's probably long past anyone here. But I had the old Minolta cameras. I too learned in the darkroom. I actually had my own darkroom, so I, like you, spent a lot of time in the darkroom, and I think that really helps you as a background as you evolve into the digital age, because you learned how to do the exposures and things like that. You know, when we didn't have all the bells and whistles. So I felt it's really helped and enhanced my experience with the technical side.
So, John, did you start in film or digital?
Yeah, I actually started with film probably in high school when you first kind of start taking pictures, and even into college, start with film. But when we my wife and I, Jenny, when we decided to start our own photography business, we started with digital. So we still use Canon digital equipment for our business. For personal trips and stuff like that, I still always bring a film camera along, but mainly for our business and what we provide clients. We just find that the digital helps with turnaround times. Yeah, we just enjoy it. So
cool. Emma, tell me about your photography, since you only started, well, 2 years ago at school, but you probably took pictures a little bit before that.
Long before that, my career with photography started as far back as actually grade 4. I attended an art school where, unlike with most elementary schools, you had a standard course as to what you take. We had electives as to what we could choose. So I as well started in dark rooms, and then over the years made the switch to digital. So it's been a long journey.
A long journey for your short life.
Yes, very true.
All right, Christine, tell me about your start in photography.
I started with the Minolta X370 in film back in the 80s, and then, but it wasn't until I got a digital camera that's actually when I launched my business, because it made such a difference as far as the cost to be in business is so different once you went digital.
Yeah, absolutely. So it's interesting this time that lots of people have had experience in film photography. On my last show, there was one person who actually still shoots film, and she specialized in film photography weddings. But a lot of people that I talk to nowadays have never even used film, or certainly haven't used darkrooms unless they've done it a little bit in high school. I actually remember doing a black and white darkroom in a summer camp that I went to, and that's kind of where I got my interest in photography and kept taking pictures ever since. So how important does each of you think that social media and blogging is for your business, or even video marketing too? What type of social media or social networks are you on, and how much of an impact do you think it's made to your business, and could you live without social media? Sherry?
Well, of course, the answer is no. I think it's a way of life. I absolutely think it's vital, and it's really handy for photographers because it's so visual. Although we do wrestle with the whole and everybody with a camera is a photographer syndrome, you know, and but it does give you a chance to make your mark, you know, your vision, your genre, your touch on things, and people will learn to see your signature look. And my personal, you know, favorites are the same as probably everybody else. You know, the Facebook, Instagram, Twitter, not so much, because I just don't feel it's a visual medium that enhances me. It's more of a, you know, it's more of someone that's not in a visual, but I understand they're putting, you know, newer things into it. As far as blogging, I actually think that is essential. The people that I've trained under, the commercial photographers and so forth, always stress blogging. But we all, as photographers, I'm sure, struggle with the load, especially you, John, like things like wedding. I mean, how do you fit the time in to blog about a wedding? And it's real, but I really think it's important that people learn to know you through those words. You know, they can learn to know you through your signature look, but they also like to know through who are you? Like, what are you bringing to it, and how can they connect with you? And that's really by you telling your story through the blogging. So I use them all, and I think they're all quite effective.
Right. So, John, do you use any specific social networks that you focus on, or do you use all of them? And how about blogging and video?
Yeah, definitely we use social media to share our photos with people. Definitely it is important. I don't know if it's actually necessary, but it kind of just kind of determines on your business and who your client is. But for us, blogging has kind of probably been an important aspect. We've actually used blogs as our portfolio now on our website, and that was mainly just to be able to show an entire wedding, and so now we just kind of link that into our portfolio. So yeah, I think blogging is really important. Like Sherry was saying, it's definitely it's always a challenge to know what social media aspect you want to focus on, because there's a lot out there. There's always something new. We definitely use Instagram and Facebook. I wouldn't say those things are necessarily our strong points. Even blogging we find difficult, because I think our weakest thing is writing, and I'm always like, oh, I just wish I could put photos up. That's all I had to do. Didn't have to write anything. So I find writing actually the most challenging part of our business. But yeah, it's Instagram's a great way. I feel like you can definitely connect with your clients. You can generate new clients. This year, I've noticed that we've had people now contacting us saying, "Oh, I found you on Instagram or something."
Awesome.
And so, well, once you start getting people contacting you that way, you really realize, oh man, that is important. And so now I think we're trying to maybe put a bit more emphasis on social media like that, because once you start seeing it bear fruit, I guess, then you realize, oh, this is definitely something we need to focus on. So, and we also use Twitter, but Twitter I think is good for just news and just kind of fast facts that are going out there. We don't necessarily use it for our business, but we have an account and we do use it. So
good.
Yeah.
Okay, Emma, tell me about your experience with social media, and if you're using anything other than social networks, if you use blogging and videos too.
Primarily I use blogging. I do post quite a bit on Facebook. It is difficult, I will agree, as John said, during the course of the day it is difficult to get your blogs up and get your posts up as frequently. With shooting event photography, especially for things like border cross events where I don't really have a moment to really miss, because there's sometimes 80, 90 competitors that I'm trying to track in the course of a day just to try and get the right shots and trying to be on a massive course and the only one there. So it's quite a challenge, but I have had great response from parents afterwards, or I've even had cousins and other family members. Oh, well, I saw you were at my grandson's or my second cousin's nephew's event over on Big White, and oh my gosh, can I get some of those photos? So it is hugely beneficial, but 100% agree with John that it can be difficult to get those posts up in the course of an event.
Yeah, I hear you. Christine, I know your answer is going to be that you use blogging because you have a 30-day blogging challenge. So start with blogging and then jump into the other social networks.
So I actually, blogging caused an interesting start to my photography career because I was already a blogger. I've blogged since 2000. And because of that, when I launched my photography career, kind of like Sherry said at the beginning, I was already out there telling my story, and people were already connecting with me over my story. And so when I launched my photography business, that first year, I was completely booked with, I had 25 plus weddings my first year, and it was because there were people that came to me that already liked me and wanted to work with me, and then they referred their friends, etc. So I will admit that there are times, if you go look through my blog archives, there are definitely some times where you can tell I was too busy to bother writing posts. And as I moved into boudoir, it got really interesting because that has such a big privacy issue around it. I could only post things that clients agreed to me posting. So it's definitely changed the dynamic of what I write about over the past 2 or 3 years. I've been on Twitter since it was like its inception, practically, like within 3 months of Twitter launching. And so Twitter has actually been really beneficial for me, but it's because of going out there and being a part of the local community. So we used to have a lot of meetups in Houston that were driven by Twitter. They don't happen quite as much now. More people have moved to Facebook, but this is all before Facebook was a thing. So, and I'm definitely on Facebook, but I find that I actually generate a lot of traffic from Pinterest. So that's probably my favorite of all of them, of where people come to me from, is through Pinterest.
So that's a good segue into my next question. How many of you actually look at your insights and your stats and see where your traffic is coming from, or are you just more organic and just post where you like it? And like John said, you suddenly see that people are coming to you from, say, Instagram, and then you realize that it's an important social network for you to use, or do you have more of a game plan when it comes to social media and blogging? If you want to just jump in, go ahead, and whoever wants to answer that.
Well, hugely, I found, oddly enough, I would have thought a huge portion of my traffic when I started following my insights on Facebook would have been coming more from teens to the mid-20s, because they're usually the athletes that I'm actually photographing. But funny enough, after following my insights and looking at where my traffic was coming from, a huge number of my followers and the people that were contacting me were in the age range between their mid-30s to almost their 50s, because it was hugely coming from parents, grandparents, and then I started thinking commercially wise, it was the people, the corporate sponsors and the graphic artists who actually deal with my images. So it was a big change, and it was a huge eye-opener as to how I was posting and what I was posting and what traffic was really being driven by what I was saying.
Good. So anyone else want to jump in on that?
I will say, when I first started putting up my fairy images about a year ago, I did the Facebook ads. To do the demographics, to honestly just to get the demographical information so I could see who was interested, because I just really had no insights into that at all. And to see where in the world, my market might be. And interestingly enough, which is not a surprise at this point because I do have more information, it comes out of the UK and Europe, primarily the UK. So that's very interesting, because then that led me to be able to track down all those groups that are interested in this particular genre that come out of the UK, and it actually led me to be able to meet a fairy artist who was in the UK whenever. So it was very valuable information me to be able to just to pay for the ads to start out with, just to get the demographic information, so I knew where to hit and what the target was in Facebook groups then at that point.
Good. Does anybody else have a comment on how much they're tracking social media and how they've figured out where the traffic is coming from?
I was going to say, I'm definitely a stat stalker. Like, I go into Google Analytics very often. I don't watch my Facebook insights as often, though, as I probably should have, and especially not after listening to Emma. So I need to go in there and watch what they're doing and saying.
Okay, so why don't I move on? The next question I have for you is, how important is real-life networking as a photographer? Do you go to any photography conferences? Do you go to meetups? Do you teach anything? Are you a member of the Chamber of Commerce? And if you are, how important is that to your business? And do you use social media to follow up? Because I know with myself, if I'm going to a conference, I track the hashtags, and then I connect with people, kind of like warm leads, and introduce myself, who else is going to this event, and then maybe meet some of the people who are actually at a conference or at a photography trade show or something like that. And any of the more techie networks that I go to, people are really big into hashtags and have all the tweets showing up on a screen, so that's always kind of fun. So yeah, why don't I just start with going back and forth with Sherry. Do you ever attend any of the conferences and things like that, and do you find networking is really important, real life networking?
Real life, in my local town, and that's one of the reasons I mentioned, I live in a highly conservative area, so I have had probably, I have many photographer friends who kind of understand what I do, but I don't have a lot of people in my local area that really subscribe and that are attracted to what I do. That's what makes social networking so important for me, to be able to go. Like I said, my market is, a lot of it, probably 75% of it, is out of the UK. As far as conferences and things like that. And when I was in the UK, the networking was huge. I mean, I did make a huge amount of contact. I travel to Ireland twice a year, usually, and stay for a month. And while I'm there, that's what I do. I do networking. I'm in contact with the people there that are into this type of thing, and it's led to a lot of different opportunities. So that's my experience primarily.
And John, how about you? Do you go to networking events, or do you go to any photography conferences to further your professional education?
Yeah, I mean, to some degree. I mean, I think at first, actually, we just went to our first photography workshop thing ever, just because everyone goes to them. We're like, oh, we might as well try them out. But it's never been something that we've kind of focused on. But I think when it comes to networking, I mean, we've shot this. This is our 8th season now in Kelowna that we've been shooting weddings, and I think over that period of time, you build friends with a lot of people in the wedding industry, and so I almost don't look at it as networking. It's just a lot of people we work with are our friends, and so we're more just feel like we're just investing in those friendships, as opposed to kind of thinking of it as networking. I mean, there's definitely opportunities to go to like photographer meetups or something like that. I wouldn't say that's a bad thing or necessarily necessary, but it's things we have done before, but not so much anymore. It's just we enjoy hanging out with people face to face, as opposed to maybe on social media. So when it seems just a bit more real, obviously, because our goal has always, I guess, been as photographers not necessarily to be a photographer for other photographers, but we've always been more focused on being a photographer for our couples, for our brides and groom. And so that's kind of how we've even used social media in those aspects. It's more how can I get those photos to our clients, and how can we do it maybe in a strategic way, where that maybe Facebook, Instagram, we show a couple images, but that all filters that traffic hopefully to our website.
Okay. Emma, have you attended any Chamber of Commerce events or any conferences or anything like that, or anything even to do with the snowboarding industry? And how do you feel about in-person networking?
For me, that has been probably the largest way that I have accumulated businesses. With being at all of my border crossing events, I've had the unbelievable privilege to work with Olympic teams, especially our most recent Canadian Olympic team. Thank you, Team Canada. As well as different mountain owners, board builders, different booting companies. So it hasn't been so much towards photography, particular conferences. it's more been about the units and the upcoming events and what are the new companies with everything along the lines of goggles to sunglasses to anything along the lines that has to do with the sporting industry. So it's hugely, hugely beneficial and incredibly important.
Right. And Christine, tell me about your experiences. You've been to WPPI. Was that you that went to? Did you speak at it?
I'm speaking this year.
Awesome. Congratulations.
I'm actually teaching a master class on blogging at WPPI. So I started off my photography career, though. I had sold another company that I had owned, and one of the very first things I did was attended a workshop that just happened to have some really great people there that taught me a ton as I was kicking off my wedding photography career. And so I've always found workshops beneficial for that, for when you're feeling really alone, having other people that you can talk to. I personally launched a meetup group in Houston back in 2008 or 2009 that not only did I see the benefit for myself, but I saw so many people grow by meeting other photographers, getting to work with other photographers, and then the impact for me was that we all would pass leads back and forth to each other. If I couldn't photograph a wedding, I would give them to someone else that I had met. I'd obviously do that before I gave them to just a stranger. So it's been really fascinating watching these people grow. We just recently started a new group that's just women photographers in Houston, and had our first meetup last month, and we're looking forward to starting those more regularly next year, just to help everybody kind of grow and come together. The biggest value that I find, though, especially working with locals, is that helps the industry. If we all price properly and price for profit, then it helps bring everybody up.
Awesome. Great answers. I started in the UK. I was living there from 2004 to 2009, and one of the first events I went to was just through the camera club. They actually had some really big photographers come and had full-day workshops, and then I discovered the Society of Wedding and Portrait Photographers, and that is a 3-day event. It's the equivalent of the WPPI, basically, and after attending that for 3 days and listening to all the 2-hour lectures that I could get my hands on, it was really exhausting, but it was really amazing to meet some of the photographers who I had idolized or who I had followed for a long time, and how approachable they are at any of these events. And then obviously you get to know a little bit more about them, and then following on, and some of them staying in touch with, or following them and on social media and sharing what they've got and tweeting it out to people that are in my group that are interested, that sort of thing. So for me, I love attending live events, and I've gone to bridal shows, which I don't enjoy as much because there's just a lot of focus on myself. I prefer to kind of be in a group like this where I can ask questions, but definitely conferences are something that I'd like to get back more into myself. We have a ton of questions, so I'll actually ask a few of the questions right now, maybe. Let me just pick. Should just give a shout out to my students here at Cato. They've got lots of questions. Yay, thanks you guys for participating. It's awesome. Let me start with, what motivates any of you to continue taking pictures economically, politically, intellectually, and emotionally? So if one of you just want to answer that question, just hop in.
I'd say for us. Oh.
Go ahead, John.
Go ahead, John.
All right. I'd say for us, a big part of the reason we're still doing weddings and are doing weddings is just you get to build a relationship with your clients, especially with a wedding. It's, most of our couples probably book about a year or so in advance, and so there's a lot of time there to kind of get to know them, build a relationship, and I feel like every wedding's different, even if we are shooting at the same venue, because everyone has a different story. Certain things in their life has brought them to that day, and so I feel like just that is what keeps us motivated to focus on every wedding. As it's like the only wedding that is important to that couple, and so yeah, that's why we do what we do, I guess.
Does anyone else want to input on that one? I've got lots of questions, so we can take turns answering different questions.
I was going to say, taking some time to really dig in and uncover my personal why then has helped keep the burnout away, as I'm sure all of us have done it, especially the longer we do it. Sometimes it gets really easy to be burned out, and so the emotional passion and having a reason behind it definitely has helped keep it fueled.
All right, so let me grab another question from Britt Amber. She said, when you were first beginning a journey as a photographer, did you have someone that helped to mentor you?
Well, that's an easy one. I'm having a little live chat with her right now.
Oh, thanks, Emma. Does anyone else? Yeah, Emma and I have actually kept in touch through the last couple of years. So yeah, it's been really amazing to see her grow as a photographer and really gain her confidence. And now that she's becoming so successful, so yeah, congratulations, Emma. You've done awesome over the last couple of years.
Yeah, probably I'd have to say my biggest mentors, of course, yourself, Angelique, and another very well-known name at Cato that most of the students should know is the ever-amazing Mr. Victor Poirier, who over several months drilled into my head that the most important thing as an artist, not just a photographer, is that it's your art. Remember that, hold on to it, don't let it go. Anyone tells you it's wrong, tell them you're not the right photographer for them, and just keep doing what you do.
Good advice. Anyone else have a mentor that they'd like to give a shout out to?
Yes, I will. I actually studied with a mentor for 3 years, and she's very, very well known in this area. Her name's Benita Keller, and love you, Benita. It's funny because just Benita taught from old school. You know, she was a fine art photographer. You did not use Facebook, or you did not use Photoshop. Drove me crazy. I hated it. Didn't want to do it, but it taught me. It taught me how to be the photographer I am, and now she's probably rolling over because everything I do is so highly edited. But that's my thing, so I'm going to own it.
Good for you. Own it. That's a good point. It's kind of reiterating what Emma said about just keep your style and do it for yourself. Let's go for one more question, then I'll get back to some of the questions that I've got. So Stacy asked, what has been your biggest accomplishment personally with your photography? Anyone?
Working with the Canadian Olympic team, by far and away.
Yeah, that sounds like a pretty big achievement. Anyone else?
Yep.
Sorry, go ahead, Emma.
I just agreed with you and said, yeah, it was, especially since I did it while I was still in school. So a little bit nerve-wracking, but to get a chance to work with, quite honestly, some of the best world-recognized snowboarders in the world was truly humbling.
Awesome. Anyone else, what's your biggest photography accomplishment to date?
I was going to say, for me, it's not even like really big moments that other people may not even know about. It's the opportunity to touch people's lives, and especially having done women photography for so many years, just the chance to show women that they really are awesome and amazing, because we're really hard on ourselves. And so to give people the chance to see themselves how the rest of the world sees them.
Oh, that's a great sentiment, and I know from myself as well, it's much easier to be behind the camera than it is to be in front of the camera. And I think I've noticed that with my subjects, and I think everybody goes through that. So it's great to be inspiring people to be themselves in front of the camera, and I think that's a real challenge, and I think it's a blessing that we all have that gift. Let me get back to some of the questions that I've got for you to answer. Let's talk about branding and websites for a minute, and how important do you think branding is in terms of not just your logo, but how people perceive you and your brand identity and all the keywords that you use and how you dress and things like that. So let's actually start from the other end. Let's just start with Christine on this one.
So I consider it really, really huge, down to the fact that whenever I'm speaking, my photos on my website all have me in bright lipstick, and before this call began, I was looking around to make sure I had some on. I tend to wear colors that match my brand. I want everything to be like a cohesive representation of me, so that there's not any disconnect. If somebody goes to, like, for example, to that talk at WPPI, And if I walked in and muted pastel colors, it would be really confusing for people.
Right.
So, and if I was silent and sitting in the corner, they would just, it would be such a disconnect. And the same for my clients. If I presented myself one way online and then I was really different in person, I just think it's confusing for people.
Yeah, I agree. And Emma, tell me about your brand, Triple F Photography, and how you came about it, and if you think branding is really important.
I think it's really hugely important to know what you want to set out and to be, as Christine said, to be your brand and to be who you are. My name just didn't, I know it's very common, most people have some variants of their name warped into their brand. For me, it didn't pack enough punch, and that really is a lot of people that look at my photography, both the light and the dark side. It's a very cohesive blend of it's very, very intense, very active. It's very pack your own punch. So Emma Miller Photography didn't really blend in with that. So Triple F Photography, it's blocky, it's aggressive, it's very much me. So it made a huge difference as to how people saw me.
Right, awesome. John, so you use your own name in your photography business, so tell me why maybe you went that route instead of choosing a name like some other people have done, and how important the branding is and how you came up with it.
Yeah, well, we use our last name just because I think it's personal. It's, it's our photos. It's, we're putting ourselves into our work and building that relationship with our couples. So for us, it just, the way we work and the way just building that relationship with our clients is important. We felt like having, our last name be a part of it definitely was almost necessary. Branding design is very important to us because actually Jenny and I, that's where we met. We met at design school, well, in college, but in the art program there. And so really that's what we started out doing, is we had our own design business. We still do design work, but 90% of what we do now is photography. So yeah, I think, and as Kristen was saying, that consistency, especially for people starting out, I would say building that consistency is probably the most important part of kind of building a brand. I don't even necessarily like using that word brand, but it's how people refer it, so that's fine. But yeah, if you can create consistency, whether it's even just with your photography within the images, but then when you look at your business yourself, like Kristen said, everything's rhetorical. The way you dress, the way you comment, in social media, all of that is a reflection of who you are and ultimately what your business is about. And so definitely that consistency from top to bottom is, I would say, key in order to establish a brand that people would recognize.
All right, and Sherry, your brand is pretty recognized whenever I see your fairy images. So tell me about your actual branding itself and your website, and how you came up with the name. Because one of the things that I noticed is you use a different name for your photography company that I've seen.
Actually, this is a very interesting story that I'll share at the end. But how I came up with my name is I wanted something that related to fairies, so it's Faye. And my name is actually, people would mistake the name Fry for Frey. So I said, okay, we're going to do Frey into Faye, and we got Sherry Frey. That's just it, So I wanted something that spoke about what I did, and I wanted it in my name. It was very easy all these years and years and years. And really, I didn't want the ex-husband's name anymore anyhow, so this just changed it. I'm good with that. So that was great. It was win-win on so many levels. But I just want to tell you how important this branding is, folks, because I just had my website redone, and it's very magical. I did not have time for a photo shoot. I have not had time. It's winter out, and I wanted a summer picture, to do that nice header, and you have all the sparkly birds and flowers, because that really is who I am, and I really want to put that out there. So I had to choose a picture that I took in Ireland. It was a waterfall, but it was quite dark in the forest, but it was quite magical. So I photoshopped it, put some background imaging, but I'm in a striped black t-shirt. I got called out on what I have on in that picture. It is not magical enough for these people. So it's really, really important. I feel like putting a subheading. I will, I will, I'm looking at my fairy godmother costume here, and I will take a picture as soon as I get a decent day. But in the meantime, people do notice this stuff. So, I mean, you really want to portray, just like Christine said, your whole image, your everything, from, like, I wear pink. That's my signature color. So I bring pink, I bring that personality, and you really have to put that out there in your, because that's how people see you. So that's my story.
That's pretty funny that people actually called you out on it, not
they
just
did.
Yeah. So for those of you, so it sounds like you do a lot of your own photo editing, Sherry, and that's jumping right into the next question. Do you outsource your photo editing and even your social media, or is it something that you do yourself? And do you find it time consuming and enjoy it, or is it something that you'd like to outsource in the future? And what's your preference for that? So go ahead now.
Yeah, I do all my editing. Obviously, that's my forte. That's my thing. That's my expertise. So I would never outsource that. In fact, I have so many people asking me to do theirs that. However, I will at some point outsource my social media. But I think it's very, very important that you keep your own voice and you keep your own finger on that, because you do not want to just be a mechanical person that's answering and involved in groups, and you don't have your own signature into that. Because I have a very sometimes sarcastic voice, and it's funny, but it's kind of sarcastic. So I wouldn't want somebody to get on there that I just want to keep your voice in what you do. But as far as photo editing, I've taken so many courses from some of the leading and premier people that's really my expertise. I love doing that. That's my art. That's how I lose myself. And yes, it can take hours. It can take days sometimes. But that's what I love.
All right, John, tell me about your photo editing. Is it something that you guys do yourselves? You've got at least a partnership, so it might be something that one of you excels in over the other person.
Yeah, no, definitely. As of right now, we do pretty much everything in-house, even when it comes to editing. This next season, we are looking to outsource the editing process. So, I mean, when it comes to culling through photos and kind of finalizing it, that's definitely something we'll always do, because I think that's kind of that's where you can, choose your style, choose your look a bit more. Refining that down is through that culling process, but definitely the editing, like we typically use Lightroom. That's something we're looking at outsourcing for this next season.
Right. And Emma, do you enjoy the editing process and doing the Photoshop? You've got a bit more darkness in your images outside of the snowboarding ones. Is that something that you like to do?
On all phases, it's a love-hate relationship. I don't like how much time it takes, but like Sherry, I couldn't trust anybody else to do what I love to do. The darker side of my images, that's really where a lot of my own personal feelings come out. So I couldn't let that go. But as far as my snowboarding ones, I'm addicted to them. I love going through them. I love seeing what I've captured in a day, seeing what people's bodies are able to actually accomplish in the snowboarding world. So I absolutely love it.
Good. And Christine, especially in boudoir photography, I bet you there's a lot of retouching. So do you do it yourself?
So I fortunately, when I started my wedding photography business, I sat down with my husband and told him I was going to start a wedding photography business. And he immediately said, you know where your problem is going to be. And I said, yes. I love the sale. I love the marketing. I love meeting with the client. I love the photo shoot. I roll my rolling bag to my trunk. I put it in the trunk, close the trunk, and mentally I'm done with it. And as we know, that's like you're actually really only at the halfway point. So I set out really early on to find somebody to do my editing for me. Fortunately, I hired somebody actually to do like office management stuff, and she thought that Lightroom looked really interesting, taught herself Lightroom, went through everything I had edited up to that point, and picked up my style. I'm actually I try to keep all my colors pretty true to how they are in real life, and I actually do really minimal retouching in my boudoir work. I focus a lot more on nailing it with the pose and in person, and try to just keep that to a minimum. And I am beyond grateful that I have somebody else that will cull them. I love all of my pictures and I want to keep them all, and clients don't need them all. They really don't. It's overwhelmed for them if you handed them 4,000 pictures from a wedding, which is not impossible to do. They wouldn't know what to do with all those pictures. So I'm glad that I have somebody that doesn't have the emotional attachment that can go through them for me. And so it was really important to know where your strengths and where your weaknesses. Now, for me, I would never give up my social media because that I want to keep in my voice.
Right.
I could see maybe if I did more on Instagram, probably having somebody to actually go in and post it for me, because there's no way to pre-schedule that. But even then, I would probably create all the imagery and write the text and everything else and just have them log in for me and make it go live. But yeah, the editing, happy to hand that off. That's not the profitable part of my business. It's more profitable for me to be selling and for me to be holding a camera in my hand.
Yeah, I agree. And one of the first things that I got rid of in my business was the photo editing and retouching part. So I do a basic culling down, and I use Lavaloo for the most part for my photo editing. And if it's good enough for Jerry Gionis, it's good enough for me. And I do have some people on Odas that I use for different types of photography. But for the most part, when it's a big shoot, I use Lavaloo, and they've been fantastic, and it's so nice. Just like in the old days when we used film, we would actually drop off our pictures, and someone else would give them back to us. We were the photographers, not the marketers and the social media people and the retouchers and editors, and the roles now with digital photography has really changed. So, like I said, for me, I was really glad to hand off that role and concentrate on the stuff that I really love doing. Just like it sounds like you do too. We're getting close to an hour on the show, so I'll just ask a couple more questions, and I'll get back to some of the questions that we've got from the YouTube comments. Why don't we just jump to, if you had one piece of advice to give a person starting out in the photography business today, what would that piece of advice be? Do you want to just start with that, Sherry?
The biggest thing I could tell you is don't compare yourself. The comparinitis will just absolutely deaden your spirit, and you can't do that. You are you. You will come up with your style. You will come up with your own area expertise. You will come up with what you shine in, but that's only by you looking at where you are and putting the milestones about where you've come. You can look at others for inspiration, but do not compare yourself.
And John, what kind of advice would you give to photographers just starting out?
Well, and kind of like Sherry's saying, is just to define your own voice. I think we all would probably agree with that. But I think something that I've kind of learned for myself this year is just defining what success is for you. And so, for someone starting out, or even someone who's been in the business for a while, I would just really think, like, what is success? Is it shooting lots, making lots of money? Is it, whatever it is, define what it is, and that'll, I think, help you kind of focus, refine your work, and kind of just put your energy, where you want to end up. So just defining what success is for you.
Awesome. So Emma, tell me what big piece of advice you give to photographers just starting out.
Don't be afraid to take chances, and don't be afraid to ask for big jobs. I jumped in while still in school with a massive provincial association, and I didn't turn back.
Awesome. And Christine, how about you?
I feel like mine's kind of a combination of everybody. Like, don't be afraid to fail. It's okay. We're not performing. Okay, don't go photograph a wedding and fail at photographing the wedding, because that's a little bit important. But the rest of the time, we're not performing brain surgery and nobody's going to die. So it's okay if you screw something up. Just fix it. And treat your clients like you'd want to be treated.
Mm.
So if you have, especially in that case, if you have a situation come up that's a problem, just think about how you'd want somebody to treat you if it had been reversed. If you were on the receiving end, what would you want to do? And it's really easy to get sucked up into doing everything, especially, we're editing, we're doing social media, we're taking pictures, we're booking clients, we're answering emails, we're doing our accounting. It's so easy to get sucked up into all of that. So spend some time thinking not just about what success is for you, but what is a successful life for you? Like, be mindful of how the rest of your life looks and build your business around that. Don't forget to actually have a life.
That's a good point to keep in mind. So I think all of us have gone through that when we started photography, not charging enough or not being able to juggle all the balls and thinking that success means money. And at some point I realized that for me success is being able to travel more, and my family is still over in England, so that's my in-laws, and the rest of my family's in Ontario, and just being able to travel more and enjoy cultures and things like that, and having that free time to just go kayaking and swimming and camping and things like that, and saving the time to do that sort of thing with my husband and enjoy life a little bit more than just working all of the time. Okay, so let's go back to some of the student questions that we still got here. Tuesday asked, what has been the biggest mistake that you made on your journey to becoming a photographer? Does anyone have a good story for that? Anyone with a mistake they'd like to actually share?
We're probably still doing it, and that's our bookkeeping. So.
All right. Anyone else have something that they've learned from their experience?
I was going to say, I actually just had, and this was kind of an unusual first time, I wrote a really personal, emotional, just pouring it out there post about how I wanted to talk about other things on my blog than just photography work. And one of my brides, so I still photograph a few weddings every year. One of my brides for 2015 took the post to actually mean that I wasn't that interested in photographing weddings anymore. And which it was actually like the opposite was what I meant by the post. But so that was just, it was interesting just going through that process and handling it with her. And I have to admit, it ended well in the sense that I want her to go be happy with whatever photographer she's using. It didn't end well, and that's also the first time I've ever canceled a contract. So I canceled the contract and refunded her money because it was far more important for me that she felt trust in being taken care of. But it was definitely a little bit of a quagmire of a situation there for a few hours.
I bet. Just a general question from Off the Record Photography. She said, if you weren't a photographer, what would you be?
Model.
Yeah, that makes sense for you, Emma, since you've done modeling as well.
Yes,
do you prefer to be on one side of the camera or the other?
I'd really have to say that it really depends. Some days I do love being in front of the camera, and other days I love being behind it. I'd really say it's a 50-50 because they're two radically different spectrums of the photography world, because the modeling that I do is so hugely different from the style of photography that I do, but they're both so incredibly important to maintaining who I am and how happy and everything that I am in my life.
Awesome. Anyone else want to jump on that?
Yeah, I was asked the same question last year, and it was a little bit eye-opening to realize that for probably about 20 years, my answer to what would you be if you could be anything was that I would be a photographer. So it was a little bit nice to realize that I had actually hit that and I didn't recognize it when it happened, but that was my answer. So now if it was anything, I probably would go off and be a National Geographic photographer and spend all my time in the mountains photographing them.
Right. Does anyone else?
The mountains don't pay very well, though, unless you're Emma and working people on the mountains.
And to be honest, I heard, I went to a National Geographic workshop at one point. It was a landscape workshop in Hawaii, which was totally awesome. But two of the photographers there were from National Geographic, and they actually said that everyone aspires to be a National Geographic photographer if they're into landscapes, but it only pays something like $35,000 a year. Now you get to travel to some amazing places, and you get some street cred, and everybody thinks it's an amazing job. But in terms of having $1 million lifestyle, it's not going to come from being a National Geographic photographer. Okay, so let's see. There's someone's asked Emma specifically, have you maintained any of the friendships that you've made at Cato?
Oh, hugely. I'm still friends with pretty much all of my graduating class and some of the former class that was underneath my class that graduated, as well as a huge portion of the all the teachers that have been at Cato. So I still keep in contact with quite a few of them.
All right, so I think we've covered most of the questions. I'm sorry if we didn't get to your question. Maybe if I could ask the photographers to hop over to the YouTube video at some point in the next 24 hours, and if you could answer some of the questions, that would be awesome, and just interact yourself, that would be great. Let's go to a couple of just fun questions to wrap up here on the Photography Pros live chat. And let's go with some rapid fire questions. I'll just ask you guys in a row. So Sherry, do you prefer film or digital?
Digital.
And John, holidays with sun and sand or snow?
Sun and sand.
Emma, city or country?
Country.
Christine, water skiing or downhill skiing?
None of the above.
What?
Unfortunately, here you'd have to pick one or the other.
But that's okay. I picked downhill.
Alrighty. I actually meant here in the Okanagan. We have both. We have mountains and we have water, and it's all-season activity in Kelowna. Sherry, Canon or Nikon?
Nikon.
Anyone else a Nikon fan? Are you guys all Canon?
Yes.
Woo! Yay, Canon! John, are you a traveler or a homebody?
Traveler.
And Emma, Starbucks or Tim Hortons?
Starbucks.
Christine, Batman or Iron Man?
Iron Man.
Me too. How about, I'll ask each of you guys this just really quickly. If you were a superhero, what superpower would you have? Or if that's really hard to find an answer, which superhero or which actor or something like that would you be? Sherry.
Oh, I would be Johnny Depp, and I would be Captain Jack Sparrow.
Oh, that would be totally fun. John, superpower or superhero?
Oh man, I guess just be able to fly.
Who?
Just to be able to fly. So I guess Superman.
Oh, okay, be able to fly. Cool. Emma, superpower or which superhero would you be?
Well, she's not really a superhero, but Catwoman.
That would be pretty cool. I can see that for you.
Yeah.
And Christine, what about you?
So I already am a superhero. I am the Avenger of Sexiness.
Oh, I remember seeing that on your profile. That is awesome. So you have named your own superhero. That is fantastic.
I actually had a client call me that, and I cried, and then about 15 minutes later wouldn't register the domain. So.
Oh no.
But
Cool.
it gives me goosebumps to this day every time I say it.
That is so cool. So here's one last question, and what is your favorite song right now, or if you had a theme song, what would that be? Sherry.
Actually, it's called Alive, and it's by a brand out of the UK called Omnia. I love it.
Cool. And is that current?
Yeah. Oh yeah. They actually have an album out. It's called Alive. Yeah, Alive.
Oh, I'll have to check that out.
Yeah, check the lyrics. They're awesome.
And John.
An artist I've been listening to lately is Josh Garrels.
I've never heard of him. Do you have a favorite song?
No, not really. Just
I have to admit that most of my music listening, outside of just listening to the radio, most of my new music discoveries come from watching the Graham Norton show, and it's kind of like Saturday Night Live. They always have a musical guest, and they always have fantastic musicians at the end. So most of my new music comes from listening to that show. Emma, tell me what's your favorite song right now?
Well, I can't ever pick one song because it pretty much narrows down to my idol, Pink. But currently, I've been listening to "Raise Your Glass" with great profuseness.
All right, and Christine, favorite song or theme song?
My theme song is "Brave" by Sarah Bareilles. And lately, I have to confess that my guilty pleasure has been Taylor Swift's "Shake It Off."
Oh, good girl. Good girl.
Oh, that's fun. Cool.
Sorry.
All right, so let's wrap up the show on that happy note. And I'd like to thank the photographers for being here and taking time out of their busy schedule today. And for some of them, it is later in the evening than here over in Kelowna in Pacific time. So thanks for joining us today on the Photography Pros live chat. And I hope that everyone in the audience appreciated their advice and their tips on social media and networking and how they grew their photography businesses. And thanks to the students at the Center for Arts and Technology for participating today and asking their questions. If anyone else has any questions, just pop them in the comments and we'll try and get those answered for you. And hopefully you'll connect with some of us on social media. And yeah, so I'm Angelique Duffield from Bright Spark Media. So we'll just have a sign off from everybody. If you just want to give a shout out to where people can find you, so give your website and maybe the best social network to connect with you on. Let's start with Christine.
So I'm Christine Tremoulet, but I realize nobody can remember how to spell that. So blogging for photographers also goes directly to my website. And you can probably find me most often on Facebook, which is also linked right there on my website.
Awesome. All right, Emma, where's the best place to find you?
Best place to find me would be Facebook, so it's F Photography, the word triple, and then the letter F. I have to explain that frequently. But then, of course, FFphotography.ca is where you can usually find all my work.
Awesome. Thanks, Emma. And John, where can people find you?
Yeah, website would be adrianphotographers.com. Instagram, it would just be @adrianphotographers.
Cool, thanks. And Sherry, where can people find you?
You can find me at www.sherryfrey.com. And very confusing, I understand, is my Facebook is Sherry Frey Photography because, you know, lovely Facebook doesn't like you to change these things. So.
Yeah.
But I have lots of cool stuff there, too.
Great. And for myself, you can obviously find me at Bright Spark Media, and Facebook is probably one of the places that I am most commonly on. And yeah, so you'll be able to find me on YouTube too. Obviously, that's where all of these videos are going to live. And once again, thanks for everybody for joining us here today. And we'll see you in the next term. I do this Photography Pros live chat twice a year for the photography students. So we'll see you in 6 months from now. Thanks. Bye-bye.
Bye.
Okay. I would sign out, but I have to say that hold on a second. Technical challenges here. You can't have the camera app open and stop the broadcast at the same time. All right, so thanks. Bye.